Let's talk about your newly purchased AR-15 and how to outfit it. Hey BLO family, Ben with Black Lab Operations coming at you with another highly requested video. You have bought your first scary black, or in this case, not so black rifle. What's next? What gear is important? What gear is not important? And for the important gear, what's the priority? What comes first? What comes last? And what are some things we should be looking out for? Let's talk about your newly purchased AR-15 and how to outfit it. So let's start off this by saying everything in this video is Ben's opinion. It's Ben's opinion that I've developed after 15 or so years in law enforcement. Lots and lots and lots of training under multiple instructors. And I gotta tell you, I change stuff all the time. Whether it's new optics or new types of lights or types of light setups or triggers and internals and barrels and such and so forth. I change stuff a lot because frankly, there's a lot of really good options out there. So I'm gonna give you what has worked really well for me over the years. We're gonna talk about one of these rifles that I built years ago, and I've carried it in exactly its same shape for a very long time, with the exception of some small changes. Then we're gonna talk about another rifle over here that is a fairly new build and the way it's been put together. So you just purchased your first AR-15. Probably doesn't look like this. Doesn't mean it can't and doesn't mean it won't one day. It's probably black, or it probably has some different color furniture, meaning a stock or foregrip on it, but it's probably just your standard black AR-15. Let me encourage you to say, just because it doesn't look fancy doesn't mean it doesn't do the work. Okay, take it to the range and get some training in, and you will you'll find that it probably works just fine. But let's talk about what's the first thing you purchase for your brand new AR-15. Again, 100% my opinion. Other than talking about changing out internals of the rifle, you've got the rifle and you want to run the rifle, but what's the first thing you need to purchase to go with the rifle? First and foremost, it's going to be magazines, and it's going to be, let me block out the company name, ammo. Okay, I'm not sponsored by the ammo company. I just grabbed a box so I can show you. Magazines and ammo. It's the first thing you're going to purchase for your new rifle. Why is it the first thing I want to purchase for my new rifle? It probably came with a mag, maybe two. If you're lucky, it might have even come with 3 mags. So the question you're going to ask yourself is that enough? If you bought this rifle solely for the purpose of going to the range, having a good time at the range, plinking around, throwing some rounds downrange, guess how many mags you need? 1. That's it. Most of you didn't buy it for that purpose. Most of you bought it, at the very least, just so I can learn how to run it, and I can learn how to run it really well. I can learn how to do things like magazine changes, and I can learn how to work out malfunctions. And some of you bought it for a much more realistic purpose, which is, I bought it in case one day someone with a gun that looks an awful lot like this wants to take it from me. If you didn't buy it for that purpose, I hope that you never need it for that purpose. I think it's coming though. So this thing is nothing but a heavy spear without one of these and without some of this. Go buy yourself some mags. I highly suggest having a bare minimum of, I don't know, 5 to 6. And I highly suggest having a bare minimum of 1,000 rounds ammo, okay? Yeah, you're looking at about $600 between the magazines and the ammo. It's worth it. It's a very worthy investment. Magazines and ammo. What's number 2? That was a little bit of a cheater, okay? Because magazines and ammo, they're not necessarily attached to the gun, so you weren't really expecting that. But the absolute, in my opinion, the absolute #1 most important addition to your rifle, because chances are it didn't come with these, even if it came with one of them, actually we'll use this one for this part, is making sure your rifle has some sort of sighting system, okay? Most rifles, straight off the internet, straight off the floor, don't come with a sighting system. If you buy a certain type, it may come with a integrated fixed front sighting system like this PSA here does. This is Michael's rifle. I've showed you guys this one before. But what it did not come with, didn't come with a rear sight. You can get all kinds of different rear sights or flip up sights. If your rifle is a slick top like this one started out as, with no fixed front sight, you're gonna have to get a front sight and a rear sight. I highly suggest, and I'm a big fan of the Magpul MBUS iron sights. They work great. They do the job that they're supposed to do. There's really nothing special or flashy about them, but they do everything they're supposed to do. There's a whole bunch of other brands out there. I suggest the Magpuls mainly because I think the price, along with the quality of what you're getting, is on par. You're not spending an insane amount of money, but you're getting something that works and works really well. So Magpul, MBUS, it's MBUS, it's Magpul backup sights. That's what I suggest. If I can get that in a little bit closer, that's what that looks like on the rear. They flip up like that when you need them, click back down when you don't. Same thing for the front. So number one, after your magazine magazines and ammo, the number one thing you need to make sure your rifle has is a sighting system. Now, let's go. We're gonna return to sighting systems here in just a second, but let's go to the number two thing, the number three thing that you need to have for your newly purchased rifle. This may be a little bit controversial, I don't care. The number three thing that you need when you purchase your new AR-15 rifle is a good quality sling. Every rifle, I don't care if it's your granddaddy's bolt action 7 mag, I don't care if it's your Ruger 1022 or it's your, what we'll call a tactical rifle. Every rifle needs a sling. The number one thing you don't want to do when your rifle runs dry, or if you get knocked off balance, or for some reason you get detached and separated from your rifle, is for it to just go flying, or for it to go in the dirt, or for it to fly off and get separated from your body in some way. It's your responsibility for this firearm to be secured at all times. Your responsibility. And if for whatever reason, that we can go through 1,000 different scenarios, but if for whatever reason this gets knocked out of your hands, the last thing you need is for it to be unsecured and open for someone to get. You need a good quality sling. Now let's talk about slings real quick. There's multiple different sling options. Really, there's only two that really get considered anymore, and one in particular that gets used more than anything else. There's your single point sling and there's your 2-point sling. Now what's a single point sling? I don't have one here to show you because I don't like them, but a single point sling essentially means you have your loop of your sling, just like you have here, but both ends of that loop attached to the same place, and usually it's right here on your plate right behind your lower receiver. And what that just generally does is that slings across your body and the rifle drops. It is secure. I think it's fine. If you like single point slings, I think that's great. I personally prefer 2-point slings, and I won't go into a ton of detail why, because I don't want this video to be 30 minutes long, but I prefer 2-point slings. I think they're not only slightly more secure, but I also think they're a little bit more functional. Not only are they secure where I can, if I need to, I can go hands-free, drop my rifle, make a transition to my handgun, but they're also a little bit more functional where I can secure them to my body. One of the things I don't like about single point slings is you drop it, there's no tightening it to your body, there's no securing it to your body. That thing is just going to sit there and sling around, flop around until you pick it up and go back to work. Whereas with a 2-point sling, like this one, and I'll show you an example of why I prefer 2-point slings. When you have it on, if you do need to drop it, you can drop it, right? But most 2-point slings have a system where they're able to cinch those slings up. I'll show that to you again. There's a little pull cord right here, pull it in tighter to your body, where you're able to cinch that sling up to your body. It moves with you, it doesn't move against you. There are, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many different brands of 2-point slings. I would guesstimate over 100, and they all work pretty much the same. I've tried probably a dozen or so different ones. I really highly prefer the Viking Tactics VTAC Mark II. That's a MK2. Viking Tactics VTAC, VTAC, MK2 2-point padded sling. I love it just for their tightening system, which again, almost all 2-point slings have that type of tightening system, but then they also have this little pull cord, right? If I need to pop that rifle back out, I just pull that pull cord and it loosens that system back up to give me all the slack out of it. May not be the best explanation. I can go into much greater detail if somebody wants to hear about it. But again, number 3 is a 2-point sling. 2-point sling is my favorite. If you prefer a single point, get a single point. These slings, if I'm remembering correctly, are about $50 a piece, maybe a little more, maybe even a little bit less. But the third most important thing to purchase for your rifle is a sling. Secure your firearm. What's the number 4 most important thing to buy for your rifle? And that's where I told you we're gonna return to the sighting system. So let's start with this rifle here. We'll talk a little bit about this one as well. But we talked earlier about sighting systems. We talked about the Magpul backup iron sights. These are, again, backups, so when you have what we're about to talk about, they stay down, they stay out of the way. Now, what's this guy right here? This is your 4th most important, in my opinion, accessory or tool or whatever you want us to call it that you're gonna add to your rifle. This is a red dot optic. Now you can get them in red dots, green dots, yellow dots, gold dots. I highly prefer red dots. They don't blend in with anything. That's my preference. You can pick whatever you think's best. But this is your typical just Holosun red dot optic, okay? Very simple, very basic optic. There is 0 magnification. All it does is place a dot over your target. Now, what's the point? You're gonna say, if I already have a front sight, I have a rear sight, what's the point of this? Very simply, you should always be good with iron sights, but this, whatever level you're at with iron sights, this is gonna take you to the next level. No longer are you going to have to line up that front sight post and that rear sight post. No longer are you gonna have to worry about equal height and equal light. You're simply gonna take that optic with that little bitty laser dot right there in the center, and you're gonna place the dot right over your target, and you're gonna press the trigger and go to work. That's gonna make you a faster shooter. It's gonna make you a more efficient shooter. It's gonna make you a more accurate shooter. Overall, dots in general, whether you're talking about rifles or handguns or shotguns or whatever weapon you're talking about, are going to make you a better shooter. Let's talk about this other rifle over here. You might have noticed, or you might not have, but let's discuss it even if you didn't. You might have noticed, well, Ben, this rifle doesn't have any iron sights on it at all. What it does have is a redundancy in your sighting system. When we talk about having iron sights and a red dot optic, that's a redundancy. If you've ever heard, there's two different kind of rules for this. If you've ever heard of Murphy's Law, we've talked about it a bunch. Murphy's Law essentially says, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And we're gonna apply Murphy's Law to your sights. 1 is none and 2 is 1. We're gonna use that for all kinds of different concepts. Knives, flashlights, whatever. If you have 1 of something, you can pretty much expect it to fail. If you have 2, then you at least have the ability to have a backup in case your primary does fail. So we're gonna have a primary of a dot sight with a backup of iron sights in case we need them. This rifle's slightly different, although we still have a redundancy. This sight right here is what's called an LPVO, a low power variable optic. It looks a lot like a scope. It goes from 1 magnification, some of them up to 4, some to 6, some to 8, some to 10. This is a 1 to 8 specifically. This gives me opportunities for magnification, so if I need to take a longer shot. But right up here up top, you'll see is a red dot. It's on what's called a piggyback mount, mounted onto our LPVO. I love this setup. This is my ultimate setup. I have my red dot mounted on top of my LPVO for quick target acquisition, as well as if I do need to reach out at a long range target, I have a long range option here as well. And again, the LPVO does have a 1, or some might call it a 0 magnification option, where it's not magnified at all. So again, we talk about redundancy. If my piggybacked red dot here fails, I still have an optic here that is not dependent upon electricity or battery power to have an optic. It has crosshairs and a reticle right in the middle of it that I can use for a sighting system with no magnification whatsoever. And likewise, if my LPVO fails for whatever reason, I have my piggybacked red dot optic to make up for the failure. And guys, I'm gonna tell you, I don't care what you buy. I don't care how much money you spend. I don't care what the brand name is on the side of that piece of equipment that you buy, no matter how expensive it is or how cheap it is. Absolutely everything has the ability to fail. All of it. All around the spectrum of price and quality, they all have the ability to fail. Absolutely, spending the bottom dollar is usually the best recipe for the most failure. But again, everything has the ability to fail, okay? I don't care how much you spend. Having a redundancy of some kind is incredibly, incredibly important. So what's the next most important accessory, tool, piece of gear that you're gonna add to your rifle? And that's this. Again, totally Ben's opinion. After you've done all those things we've talked about, in my professional opinion, the next thing you need to add to your rifle is a quality rifle light. This has been somewhat of a topic of conversation amongst me and some of my students lately. We just had our low light class and we had a bunch of people buying lights for stuff, and some that were just like, I'm just not gonna do it. I don't think I need it. I don't think I want it. Listen, man, it's your journey. Do what you want. But let me ask you a question. When the lights go out during that self-defense situation or that home defense situation, or when you are out and about and you hear a bump that you don't know what it is and you need to see what it is to protect yourself, how much is the ability to see that thing worth? It's worth a lot to me. Now, do you need to go out and spend a ton of money? I don't think so. I really don't think you do. Everybody's got different interpretations of what a ton of money is. I think there are good quality options that don't cost you an arm and a leg, and this is one of them. Streamlight ProTac Rail Mount 1. It's a great quality rifle light. Streamlight is an incredibly well-known and reputable company here in America. They do solid work, they make great products, and they have a warranty that I just don't think you can beat, okay? Your most popular options when it comes to weapon lights, you're generally talking about Streamlight, you're talking about Surefire, you're talking about a little bit more recently, Cloud Defensive, you're talking about not nearly as much anymore, but sometimes Olight. Those are your main players in the weapon light industry. Streamlight, in my opinion, is just as good as all of them, and it's not the cheapest option, but it's certainly far from the most expensive. The same type of light from Surefire is going to cost you somewhere around $250 to $350. For Streamlight, this light is $125. Comes with a pressure switch that you can lay across your handguard that you can activate without having to take your hand off the rifle. This is my typical rifle grip. Whenever I mount the rifle, my thumb lays right over the top of my handguard and I'm able to activate that light, okay? I highly suggest when you purchase a weapon light for your rifle that you purchase one that comes with a pressure switch of some kind. Highly, highly suggest getting a weapon light for your rifle. What's next? So we're about to wrap this up, and there are just a few more pieces that I want to talk about that I think are extremely important to you in running your rifle and running it really, really well. The next on the list is this guy right here, okay? This is what we're gonna call a foregrip. Some people call it a vertical foregrip. There are also angled foregrips, something to assist you in getting a good, solid grip on your rifle. I prefer vertical foregrips. They give me the best retention of the forend of my firearm. They also are a more natural, kind of a wraparound point for my fingers. It feels more natural to me. Some people don't need them and don't want them. They're perfectly fine to just wrap their hands around the forend. That's fine. If you shoot a lot, you will find that that's gonna get a little warm, okay? It gets a little bit hot. Some people also like the angled versions where it's very similar to just wrapping around the handguard, but it just gives you a little bit of an angle off that handguard. Again, it's totally preference. I've done them all. My preference is this guy right here. This is the BCM Mod 3 vertical grip. The reason I like it is it's not super pronounced. It doesn't stick way out here like some of the earlier versions of vertical grips did. And it also has a little bit of an angle forward. This is, for me, makes it very comfortable whenever I mount that rifle. Gives me a really good position to pull that rifle back into my shoulder. It makes things so much more secure for me. I end up feeling like I've got a really, really, really good hold on that rifle. Something I don't think I quite get whenever I'm handguard only or even with an angled handguard. Let's talk about this rifle over here. Has something very similar, but slightly different. This is just the typical Magpul vertical grip. Same basic concept. Gives you the ability to wrap a few of your fingers around it and dig that thing into your shoulder. Not everybody likes a vertical grip. That's totally cool. For me, it's just high on my priority list. Let's talk about stocks, okay? Just like everything else, there's a million different kinds of stocks, and you can go a whole bunch of different ways. You have stocks that have a really wide cheek weld on them. Like this one, this is the B5 SOPMOD Enhanced stock. It's widened, so for me, I'm able to get a really, really good cheek weld, particularly if I'm doing any long range shooting at all. But you have other options for stocks. Probably one of your most popular and most common, just your typical Magpul collapsible stock. There's nothing in the world wrong with this. They're pretty cheap. I highly suggest them to most anybody. I went with the B5 again because they had a better cheek weld, super duper lightweight. It was just a lot more comfortable for me, but this Magpul stock is great. One more thing that I do prefer about this B5 SOPMOD stock is the collapsing adjustment, okay? I don't have to go searching for this button or this lever, whatever you want to call it, to collapse or open up my stock. I can just grab over the whole stock, squeeze, and go whichever way I want. Some other stocks, namely the Magpul, your lever is here inside the frame of the stock. Is that really a problem? It's really not a problem. It's a training issue. It's something that you'll want to make sure you train with. But instead of just being able to grab and go, I'm gonna have to fish my finger inside the frame of that stock to make sure that I can access that lever really well. When it's starting to pick up, so we're gonna wrap it up. And the final two pieces of gear that I would say need to be high on your priority list for your new rifle is number one, an extended charging handle. If you take a look at this charging handle here, you have this extended lever here. This gives you some extended real estate to be able to grab a hold of your charging handle and get a really easy rack on it. That's particularly beneficial when you have an optic on it like I do that brings that optic back. Doesn't have great eye relief, so you got to get it fairly close to your eye. You guys that run ACOGs will probably know what I'm talking about, but you have to get that optic pretty close to your eye so it sits right over here, right over the top of your charging handle. With a typical charging handle can make it difficult to be able to get a good amount of real estate to make good contact. That extended charging handle, you can see, sticks out quite a bit away from that optic, making it, even without looking, super easy just to grab a hold of. When you look at your typical stock charging handle, which is this guy right here, you're talking about a 1/2 inch of difference in the distance or the real estate, I should say, of what you can grab a hold of. Again, we're working everything at speed. So when we're talking about a crisis time, we need to get a hold of it quickly. You want that extra real estate. This one here is a Radian charging handle. This is one of their older versions because again, I built this rifle a long time ago. It's not ambidextrous. I highly suggest an ambidextrous, but it's not really required. But I highly suggest a good extended charging handle as one of your top priorities. And then last, and just for fun, this one is not going to be popular amongst the training community. I have a slightly different approach to this concept, but this is called the Magpul bad lever. Now, what's the Magpul bad lever? When your bolt is locked to the rear, like it is now in this rifle, the Magpul bad lever sits right here inside your trigger guard, and it gives you the ability to send your bolt home with your trigger finger without having to remove your support hand from your rifle. But in most cases, you've just finished a reload, so it saves you time. I have just finished a reload, I've inserted my magazine, and now instead of coming up here to hit here and then having to reestablish contact with my rifle, as I'm reestablishing, hit that bad lever and send my bolt home. Again, not everyone likes them. They're not everyone's cup of tea. Some people are really not a fan of them because they require you to use your finger for something other than the trigger, near the trigger. I have a different thought process on it. I think it's a training issue. I don't think you should put one into use unless you've trained with it specifically, and I cannot say that enough. I do not think you should use a bad lever or any other kind of assisted device unless you've had extensive training with it, extensive range time. Can't say that enough. Extremely important. But again, for me, it's all about time. If my bolt is locked to the rear, and we'll just use a imaginary magazine, I have brought my rifle in my workspace, I have loaded a new magazine. Instead of having to release the bolt here and then reestablish on my rifle, I'm able to reestablish on my rifle and send the bolt home at the same time. I think that's valuable, but it's probably why it's at the very bottom of my list of priorities. So something to think about. Magpul bad lever, 20 bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. So listen, we talked about a whole lot of stuff, and to be quite honest, did this video kind of on a whim, but I think it could help a lot of you in a lot of different ways. Magazines and ammo, number one thing. Listen, and I'm still gonna say those are your number one priority, but what I'm gonna tell you is honestly your number two priority is to get some freaking training, okay? This thing is not worth anything to you unless you know how to run it. And it's not a bolt action hunting rifle. It's not a pump action shotgun. It's not a handgun. This requires range time. This requires actual time spent putting in the work. Dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. Get some training time. And as you are able, add the tools to your rifle to make it everything that you want it to be. But nothing is more valuable than training time. Go to the range, get outside, get to a class, get professional training, and spend time at the range. Learn how to use this thing. Otherwise, it's not worth anything to you. If you have any questions about any of the equipment that we talked about, or any other equipment that you'd like to hear, or anything you'd like to hear more in depth, please comment below, let us know. I will do another video. That's my promise. You ask a question, I'm looking for content ideas anyway. Ask a question, I'll do another video. With that said, be safe, be dangerous, go to the range. Have a great day.